classes and online classes as well. And then I have MTH from August. That is my educational background. I've given New Testament Greek, uh, those who have been taking New Testament Greek, they we have communicated for the second time, and I'm so happy. ያ ብዙ ተማሪዎች አልመጡም አይደል? አልገቡም።
አለን
ትንሽ ተማሪ ብቻ ነው ታየኝ የገባው። 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 ተማሪ። ኦኬ ጸልየን እንጀምር። እሺ አባት እግዚአብሔር ሆይ በክርስቶስ ኢየሱስ ስም ስለዚህ እድል እጅግ አድርገን እናመሰግንሃለን። ክብር ምስጋና ላንተ ይሁን። በዚህ ኮርስ ሁሉ እንድናደርግ ለኢየሱስ ስም ተቆጣጠር። ሁሉን አዳር አሳልፈን አንተ ሰጠን። አሁን ወንከውን አቤት ጌታ በኢየሱስ ስም ስትል ስማን። አሜን። እሺ ይሄ ኒው ቴስታመንት ኤክሰጀሲስ ነው። አይ ቲንክ ባለነው ተማሪዎች እንጀምርና ቀስ ብለው የሚገቡ ይመስለኛል። የመጀመሪያ ክላስም ስለሆነ ኦኬ this is New Testament exegesis class, and we have the course syllabus. We first of all better to start with the course syllabus. Yeah. So I have here presenting the course syllabus here. So the description of the course, which is the course catalog, is named as the course DL403 New Testament Exegesis, and the credit hour is 3 credit hour, and that means 163 instructional hours. That means teaching hour, instructional hour. So course description. The course is designed to teach the student for foundational principles for the exegesis of the New Testament scripture. Exegesis is an essential skill for understanding text, both primary source material and secondary literature. So for this course, we must use primary material is our Bible, and secondary materials are just extra to the secondary to the Bible. And primarily, we use our Bible as a text. So we must be careful when we have been discussing about the biblical matters. So that is our primary or our initial material is the Bible itself. So in this course, we use both the primary and secondary materials. So this is New Testament exegesis, not the Old Testament exegesis, because the New Testament has its own unique character. The New Testament, for example, when we have analyzing the linguistic background for the New Testament was written in Greek, whereas the Old Testament written in Hebrew. So they have their own significant difference regarding their exegetical methods, and there are also significant differences as well. But in this section or in this course, we have been dealing with the New Testament exegesis. So we have given much emphasis for the Greek language as we have taught so far. So some Greek words we may use some Greek words, some Greek concepts are there in order to exactly know what we have been discussing in the New Testament. So we have primarily deals with the New Testament texts. So this course primarily concerns with New Testament exegesis, not the Old Testament exegesis. So the goal is to enhance students' ability to draw authorial meaning from text via close reading. So what does that mean, authorial intended meaning? We know that the Bible has dual authors, both the human author and the guidance of Holy Spirit are there. So since the Bible is communicated with the language of human being, so we must analyze the linguistic part of the Bible. So in doing so, we have been dealing with the authorial intended meaning. What does that mean, authorial intended meaning? Not anything else, not imposing our personal idea, philosophical background, pre-understanding, and not, but our attention and our main concern is in order to identify authorial intended meaning, not from anything else, from their close reading, not only our close reading, but also we use also secondary resources, secondary to the reading of the Bible. So in doing so, students will develop exegetical skills through textual analysis. We'll discuss what does that mean, textual analysis, and engagement with secondary literature and application to ministry context as well. So in this section, we have different tasks are there, not only close reading, not only textual analysis, it is more than that. So proper understanding or proper using of the methodologies of exegesis leads us to proper application. Unless our exegesis is done very well, our application will be misleading. So we have different concerns in order to make proper exegesis. So the course objective in this course, by the end of this course, the student will be able to demonstrate proficiency in Greek exegesis of the New Testament. As we have been discussing so far, the Greek language is the language of the New Testament. So whether we like or not, we use the Greek language be along with the English counterpart. So in this part, we'll discuss that one. What does that mean? Some of the Greek parts, especially when we have been discussing about the syntactical structure of the the biblical text. When we have been discussing about syntactical, what does that mean? Syntactical structure. Then what does that mean? Sentence flow. What does that mean? Sentence structure, and so on. We will discuss that one. When we have been discussing that issue, we have been using the Greek words, and we may use some Greek words that since the Greek word is necessary or the Greek nuanced meaning is important in order to understand the properly, in order to understand the text properly. So these are the original language. So we have receptive language, call it that receptive language. Amharic, English, and other language, I will call it receptive language. So we have the original language. With the original language is the Greek. So that's why we have been focusing on the Greek New Testament. So the other objective is in order to apply linguistic, historical, and literary method interpretation. As we discussed before, our main aim is in order to identify the authorial intended meaning by closely reading our biblical text. That is our main concern. In doing so, we have discussing about some background information, not only background information, but also textual analysis. That means we have different methodologies. We have been discussing different methodologies, even though that is the case, but our intention and our focus will be reside upon identifying the literary context and the historical context in order to understand the authorial intended meaning of that biblical text. That is that is our main objective. So after that, we will draw some theology from that text or from that context. So we'll draw some theological conclusion. That theological conclusion may be Christology, that may be pneumatology, and so on, or else theology proper. So after proper doing our task, we'll come to our theology. Okay. Understanding theological implication of the theological finding, and the other objective is engage with contemporary scholarship on the New Testament text. Not only the identifying the authorial intended meaning of the biblical text, but also we have been discussing about who says what, or what are the the scholarly climate of regarding that biblical text. What are their understanding? What are their decision since we have been living in the world? So, in one way or another, their understanding affects different arena of our environment. So that's why we have been discussing about their understanding. Okay. And then after that, develop sound hermeneutical principle for teaching and preaching. That is then at the end of steps, we call it that steps of exegesis. When we have been finishing our steps of exegesis, the ultimate purpose of the exegesis is not just to apply first of all for our service, and next to applying for our service, but also preaching for others. That is the ultimate result of our exegesis. At the end of our exegetical step, the ultimate the ultimate end goal of our exegesis in order to apply the biblical text, not only applying that biblical text, but also preaching from that biblical text. That is our main objective. So, as we discussed before, the course load is 3 credit hours. That means for each 1 hour or each hours of the class lecture or this online lecture, you are expected to spend 2.5 hours or outside of the class. But this is clear. For 1 hour lecture class, you are expected to read 2.5 hours extra load in your home. That is the course load of this course. In short, that is the course load. What does that mean? Look at the course load. That's the course load. Okay. And regarding our assessment method is, since this is online class, you have expected to do this assessment test. So it is compatible for online class assessment. Okay, that the first assessment or the first assignment will be textual criticism assignment. We will discuss about that one. What does that mean, textual criticism? It is not criticizing the Bible, rather it is critical engagement of the text. So textual criticism, we will discuss a lot about that one. Since our Bible, or the first written word of the Bible is not existed today. We have the copies of copies, copies of copies. So we must compare that manuscript in order to identify the near to that original text. So we need to identify textual variant reading are there. After that, we will discuss what does that mean textual criticism. And then the first assignment will be on the textual criticism. And also we have word assignment. Words has different meaning in different time, historically, and within a certain specific period of time. So we have either diachronic word study or synchronic word study. So I will select one of the word study methods or word study types, and I will give you that assignment. Okay, the other assignment is exegetical paper. This exegetical paper is, since we have been discussing about the different part of your full exegesis, I will give you some part of exegesis or some part of exegesis. So that means we may do, for example, historical background. So that historical background may take or may have 20% of your grade, and then we will do final exegesis. So the complete detailed exegesis from the first step to the end of the step. You follow these steps, and you will do this exegesis. So as you are familiar with the grading system of seats, so you are expected to be more than 83% of this one. This is a bottom margin of your grade point. So you are expected to score more than 83. Okay. Since you have been master class. Absent and tiredness, absenteeism may cost you a lot because in each days we have been discussing new ideas. So unless you have been following attentively, you may miss the concepts that we have been discussing in each days. every disturbing materials will be avoided, and your environment must be ordered and clean, and it must be disturbance free. So that is my advice. Okay, required texts. We have different texts are there, but have selected some of these texts. But our texts have been special, or that means they are limited for special task. For example, for biblical, for the work study, we have been. I will give you some of the resources that used to make the word study. So, but we have general texts that introduce the the general theme that is the general of that generalize, and they discuss step by step of your exegesis part. But the main guide is new introduction to introduction to New Testament interpretation, guide to the New Testament exegesis, volume one. It's compiled by Scott McKnight, and I will send these all references at the end of the class. I will send these references. Okay. The other book is the exegetical fallacy, and that help us to identify to avoid common pitfalls of the biblical interpretation, common mistakes, and say common mistakes of biblical exegesis. It's written by the D. Carson, and the other New Testament exegesis handbook for students and pastors. This one is Gordon Duffy. And supplemental materials, various academic articles will be provided, online resources, and software recommendations for Bible work, logos, or academic concordance for New Testament, sorry, Greek or Hebrew studies. So the Greek New Testament, this one is the apparatus, UBS apparatus, and Netherlands apparatus, US apparatus, especially when we have been discussing about the textual criticism. We'll discuss that one. Okay, additional journals and articles will be included to highlight the our topics of the the overall topic of our introduction. Before that, I will send some of the notes to you. That is the introduction part, but I will also send extra materials when it is appropriate. Following this, for today, we will discuss the introduction part, introduction to exegesis. What is the exegesis? What does that mean? Exegesis, definition of exegesis. And next class, textual criticism and manuscript studies will be there. What does that mean? Textual criticism, we'll discuss that one. Greek syntax and grammatical in exegesis. To highlight some of the overview of our, for example, in textual criticism, we'll discuss about what are the textual variants. Our main concern in order to identify textual variants and how do we decide the the close reading of our our original New Testament text, since the the copying of this text was made by the hand, then knowingly or unknowingly, there are some textual variants or variant readings are there. That's why we have so many translations. We didn't deny that. But how do we identify the original text? We will discuss on that textual criticism from our manuscript studies. The good thing is that we have earliest manuscript, whether their geographical location is Alexandria, Western or Byzantine. We have the earliest manuscript in the form of different manuscripts, in the form of parchment, in the form of papyrus, in the form of Phoenician, and so on, whether it is in the form of paper written in the text, plain text. We have these resources, this ancient manuscript. So comparing these ancient manuscripts, we have been dealing with to identify what is the exact reading of that biblical text, and we have been approaching close to the original text. The other thing that we have been discussing, we have been planning to discuss is that Greek syntax and grammar. Syntax means sentence structure or relationship of words. Not only the relationship of words matter, but also the relationship of phrase within a sentence. Not only phrase, but also sentence are related to one another. Not only sentence and the paragraph, discourse levels are so. We will discuss that one at the word level, at sentence level, or else in the discourse level. That's there. So our syntactical analysis covers that one. So in doing so, we'll discuss about sentence structure. How do we structure a given sentence? There are certain combinations that are used to analyze a specific sentence within that given structure. So the other thing that we have been discussing is that the historical context of the New Testament. This historical context used to especially in order to have the background history of the given biblical text. That background study helps to know more about the given biblical text. What is the background situation, whether it is historical, cultural, political, and the maybe social. So social, cultural, political arena of the given biblical text is very important in order to understand the given biblical text. So historical, the key historical events and figures will be there, and we'll discuss a lot about that one. Since the Bible is written in the Greco-Roman Milan, that is our Greco-Roman, how much the Greco-Roman influenced the given biblical text or not. If it is not influenced by that situation, we'll discuss that one. Okay, literary context and genre. And literary context. What does that mean, literary context? So literary context. What are the literary units that surrounds your text under investigation? Whether it is preceding context or preceding context, whether the your text under investigation, well, this is the literary context. Con means that surround the text. That means your literary context. So we'll discuss about that genre. What does that mean, biblical genre? There are certain well-known genres in the uh, New Testament. Some of New Testament are categorized under gospel and historical writing. Some of them have their own unique features. Gospel have its own unique features, and some are epistles, letters. They have their own unique features, and there are also apocalyptic literature. In the gospel, for example, in the case of the Revelation. So these are the question of genre. How do we handle this different genre? So this is the literary context related to literary context. So the other thing is lexical analysis. Lexicon means the meaning of a specific word, as we discussed before. Diachronic and synchronic study will be there. And not only that, text, the textual meaning, nuanced meaning are there. We discuss that one. We have, in order to, in order to, in order to read or in order to identify this, in order to perform this this lexical analysis, there are certain books that have specialized in this case. For example, these are lexicons are there, BDAG, for example. So this is the lexicon. Lexicon is more than dictionary meaning of that biblical text. So we'll introduce some of the lexicons and we'll do that. We'll do ከዛ ውስጥ እያወጣን እንዴት አድርገን አንድን ቃላት diachronic or synchronic. Dia means through the time, chronos means time, through time, historical meaning of that text. Synchronics means the given meaning of that specific area, especially in the New Testament time. The meaning of that word in a specific period of that time. The historical meaning of that meaning we call it diachronic meaning of that diachronic word study. We call it that diachronic word. So in that lexical analysis, we discuss that one. Okay. The other thing that we have been discussing is grammatical and syntactical analysis. We have already discussed this one. What does that mean? Grammatical and syntax, sentence structure, relationship using grammar, resource, and so on. And then we will develop the steps of exegesis. Since our main aim is exegesis, so these are the details of the each steps of exegesis, even though that's the case. But when we have been applying that steps side by side, we will expand that step by applying all the things that helps to identify or to know more about that specific exegetical step. So first of all, we'll introduce the biblical step, the biblical methodologies, and so on. Then we'll expand each of them step by step. Then we'll summarize and then we'll conclude our the summary of everything at the end of our course. So from general to specific, our teaching method is from general to specific, and then we generalize as come to generalize when summarizing the things. And at the end of our section, we will discuss about how do we structure or how do you write a biblical exegetical material, or how do you write an exegesis paper. So we'll discuss that one at the end of our course. These are the things that we have been planning to do. ጌታ ቢፈቅድና ብንኖር እነዚህን ነገሮች ለመማማር አቅጃለሁ። ጥያቄ ያላችሁ? Thank you, Zalalan. Yes, Asafa.
Okay, thank you very much for the brief explanation of the course syllabus. And my question is just simple question. I do have one simple question.
Okay.
That is, we are here a mixed type of students. Some students, I think, are third year students, some are second, and some, including me, are just beginners. That means we didn't taken yet the Greek course.
Yeah.
Therefore, in this material that I'm just looking at, there are issues that will just cover a kind of Greek grammar and something like that.
Okay.
Therefore, try, because if we don't have anything that we have taken, we don't just deal about the grammar and the like, because we didn't taken the course yet. Therefore, I just tell you this to take it into consideration when we are just taking this course.
Okay.
That is my simple issue to share.
Okay, don't worry. We'll handle that one. I know your ስጋቴ ይገባኛል። ግሪክ ላይ ፎከስ ስለምናደርግ አንዳንድ ነገሮች ሊገቡ ይችላሉ። ለምን ግሪክ አንዳንዶቻችን አልወሰድንም ነው አይደል?
Yes, yes.
Okay, we'll handle that one because we have been, along with Greek, we have been using the English counterpart. So it is not Greek class, but we use Greek along with English. Even though that is the case, but using our Greek counterpart helps a lot in order to understand the proper meaning of that biblical text. So that's why we have been started our initial with the original language, since we have the translated language or secondary language. So along with the Greek word, I will put the English counterpart of that meaning. In that case, we will communicate, though we haven't yet taken the Greek language, but we will learn through that way. That is my advice, but don't be worried. That's not entirely Greek. The main purpose of the course is New Testament exegesis. Okay. Okay, thank you. Is there any question?
Yes, I have.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, teacher. Okay, shall I give for Matsala or can I proceed?
Yes.
የኔ ጥያቄ ያው ጋሽ ማቱሳላ ስላነሳ ብዬ ነው። እሺ ቅድሚያ ለእርሶ ሰጥቻለሁ።
እሺ አመሰግናለሁ። Previous friend asked the question. That question was also my question, but we have got an answer. And my question is, as you know, we are the first year students. This is the standing point for us. I have something, you know, I suspect that something is very difficult I don't have an experience learning with this material. This is the first time. How can we take the notes and such kind of things, additional materials? Our instructor, you are telling us, but the things are not sophisticated to take notes and other materials. So how can, what will be, what was your solution? What solution will you tell us? This is my question. And the other thing is, how can you wrap up with those who are second and third year students? How you can wrap up us? We are new for everything, and just your consulting is very important for us. Thank you very much. This is my question.
I think your first question is how do we get the resources?
Yeah.
I think we have the Telegram account are there.
Yeah.
If we haven't Telegram account yet, we'll create today, and we'll tell to the registrar. I think Alte have been listening us, and he will provide the Telegram group. And then at that Telegram group, I will share you everything what I have.
Okay.
So in that way, we will communicate. Yeah, physically contact ብቻ ማድረግ ነው የሚቀረን እንጂ ብዙ ጊዜ ስላልተለመደ ነው እንጂ አይ ቲንክ ሁሉንም ሪሶርሶች ይኖሩናል። ጥያቄ መጠየቅ ከፈለጋችሁ ትጠይቃላችሁ። ሪሶርስ አለላችሁ። ፈተናም እንደዚሁ በፈተና ሰዓት ማነው እንዴት አድርጋችሁ እንዴት ማድረግ እንዳለባችሁ ጋይድ አደርጋለሁኝ። ምን ማድረግ እንዳለባችሁ ኮሚኒኬት እናደርጋለን።
እሺ፣ አመሰግናለሁ።
እሺ ኦኬ። ምናልባት እንግሊዝኛ የስ
የዚህ ሌክሲኪያን እና ግራማቲካል ሲንታክስስ ላይ ያሉ አናላይሶች እዚያው ላይ ሞሮፋውን ቅድም ሲጠይቁ ከነበረው ከግሪክ ጋር የተያያዘ ሊሆን ይችላል እና
ያ ሊትል ቢት ድምፅህን ትንሽ ከፍ አድርግ።
ሌክሲካል አናላይሲስ እና ግራማቲካል አናላይሲስ ሲንታክስ አናላይሲስ ጋር ተያይዞ ያለው ከዚህ ግሪክ ጋርም ተያይዞ ያለ ባለፈውም ከተማር ነው ይሰማል አይደል? ድምጼ እሱ ጋር የተያያዘ ሊሆን ይችላልና ምናልባት እሱ ጋር ሜቢ እንግዲህ ወይ ሪደንደንሲ ሊኖር ይችላል። ምናልባት አይ ዶንት ኖ እንግዲህ ጊዜውን ከመጠቀም አንፃር ብያስቤ ነው እንግዲህ ወይ ወደም ባልገባኝ ሊሆን ይችላል። አንዱ እሱ ነው። ሁለተኛ ደግሞ ኤግዜጂካል ፔፐር ስንሰራ ከዚህም በፊት በሄርሜኔቲክስ ብዙ ጊዜ እንዘናጋለን። ማለት አሳይመንቶች ምናምን ከተሰጡ በኋላ ወደ መጨረሻው ሰዓት ላይ ነው ረናፕ የምናደርገውና ቀድመን ልክ ኮርሱ እንደጀመርን ከዛሬም ሊሆን ይችላል ከሌላ ቀንም የኔ ሰጀሽን ነው የምንመርጥበትን ነገርና ከስር ዴቨሎፕ እያደረግን ለአንተ እየሰጠንህ ኮሜንት እየሰጠህን ብትሄድ በሁለት ሳይድ የማደጉ ነገር የመስራቱ ፕራክቲሱ ነገር ይጨምራል ብዬ አስባለሁ ካገኘኝ ማለት ነው። አለበለዚያ እንግዲህ አሁን ወደ 14 ኮርስ አካባቢ ወስጃለሁ። ልክ መጨረሻው አካባቢ ላይ ነው በቃ ወደ ፔፐሩ የምንገባውና ያ ደግሞ ለእውቀት ጥሩ አይደለም። እኛ ለእውቀት እዚህ ስለገባንና ዛሬውኑ ወይ በሚቀጥለው የምንጽፈውን ብንጀምር ብትሰጠንና ከዛ ከስር እየሰጠን ኮሜንት እያደረግን ብትሄድ በዚህ አንተ ታስተምረናለህ፣ በዛኛው ሳይድ ደግሞ እኛም ዴቨሎፕ እያደረግን ጥሩ እውቀት እናገኛለን ብዬ አስባለሁ። የኔ ሰጀሽን ነው።
That's good. ጥሩ ሀሳብ ነው ዘላለም ያነሳኸው። አስቀድመን የምንሰራቸው ስራዎች አስቀድመን ቢሰጡን ነው። አይ ቲንክ ሁሉንም አሳይመንቶች አሉ። ስለዚህ በዚህ ሳምንት ፎርዋርድ አደርግላችኋለሁ ሁሉንም አሳይመንቶች። ለዛ ግባት እያገኛችሁ ልክ ነው ኮሜንት እዛው ሼፕ እየተደራረግን ኮሜንት እያደረኩኝ በዚህ መልኩ እንማማር የሚል ሀሳብ ነው። ጥሩ ሰጀሽን ነው። I forward all the questions. ሁሉንም ጥያቄዎች የምሰራቸውን ነገሮች አስቀድሜ ፎርዋርድ አደርግላችኋለሁ። Okay, you haven't any question? Okay. ክላስ አወራችን I think 12 ተኩል ላይ ነው የሚያበቃው፣ ከ45 ላይ ነው የሚያበቃው። 11 ሰዓት ይጀምራል፣ 12 ከ45 ላይ ያበቃል። That's the schedule. በሳምንት አንድ ቀን ነው የምንማረው፣ ሰኞ ቀን። ክላስ መቀየሩን ምናልባት ወይም ካልተመቸኝ አዲስ ነገር ካለ አስቀድመን እናሳውቃችኋለን። ሞስት ላይክሊ ሰኞ ቀን አለው። ኦኬ ሶ this is the overall introduction of the course. Then if you haven't any extra question, we'll start our teaching. Sorry, the computer is stuck. That's okay. This is New Testament exegesis, as I have briefly introduced so far. Then we'll start with defining what does that mean, exegesis. Exegesis is the careful process of drawing out the meaning from a biblical text, not the meaning from anything else, from the biblical text. That is drawing out, not drawing in or reading into. This is drawing out of that, drawing out of the authorial intended meaning of the biblical text. So this is a careful task. Since we have been using the steps, we have been, in order to draw that biblical intended meaning, we'll use certain steps. So exegesis, the central goal of exegesis is to understand the text as it was originally intended by its author and its original context, rather than imposing modern interpretation on it. So one of the pitfall of the improper usage of exegesis, or the pitfall of exegesis, is drawing into the text our ideological presupposition, or reading from our perspective, or drawing into our supposed meaning in the given biblical text. So exegesis is the opposite of this. Ex and Jesus. This ex, you understand what does that mean? This is a Greek word. Ex means to out. Eis means into. So not exegesis. This one is exegesis. We have been discussing about exegesis. So exegesis means it is drawing out the meaning from a biblical text. So in order to draw the meaning from the given biblical text, we must be faithful to the biblical text. Unless we are not faithful to the biblical text, we have we may end with reading our understanding into the text or inserting our presupposition into the text. Most of the pitfall of this interpretation is this. So our exegesis is drawing out of meaning. That's not our meaning, that is authorial intended meaning. So in order to identify authorial intended meaning, we must be faithful to the biblical text. So one of the pitfall, one of the misconception of exegesis is imposing our ideological baggage on the text. So that is the opposite of exegesis, means exegesis. So we must be careful, we must give careful, we must be take care about imposing our understanding, our presupposition, our philosophical understanding, including different things, pre-understanding ourselves and our philosophical presupposition are there. So we must be take care about imposing our ideologies on the text. So question readers to avoid this thing. So we have defining exegesis. Don't forget that one. Exegesis is what? Drawing out of the authorial intended meaning. Drawing out, not imposing in or reading into the text. That is exegesis. So what is the common pitfall or the common mistakes in the arena or in the task of exegesis? One of the common mistakes or the common pitfall is imposing modern ideas. What does that mean? Danger of reading modern thoughts or culture bears into the text. For example, feminism, or reading in the site of feminism, or reading in the context of, or reading in the context of liberation, or there are different philosophical understandings. So this is one of the pitfall, or one of the the the, the things that we must be careful in order to not impose our biblical, in order to not impose our understanding on the biblical text. That means our limitations, just not to draw into that, not to draw in our limitation into that biblical text. Okay. Overlooking literary forms, as we discussed before, there is a specific biblical genre or specific, their genre is there. So we have, for example, we don't be confused with the biblical genres, or we must not generalize, or we must not treat as one. That means, for example, we have epistolary genres are there. So epistolar is its own character. Epistolar is its own introduction, its introduction, maybe salutation, and main bodies are there, conclusions are there. This is a common characteristic of epistle. For example, Pauline epistles have their own character, general epistles are there. So treat epistle as an epistle genre, and also historical narratives are there, the book of Acts, and the gospel, or sometimes we use the gospel or the historical genre as one, and epistolary materials as one. and Revelation is categorized under apocalyptic literature. There is many symbolic elements are there. Symbols, figures are there. So we must know the exact meaning of that symbol, and then we must be careful about the biblical genres. So overlooking literary forms, how reading parables, for example, literary history or interpreting proverbs as universal forms can lead to errors. Sorry, this is a literary form. This one is a literary genre. So ፎርሙ ምን አይነት ነው? በምን አይነት ፎርም ነው? ይህን በደንብ ዲቴል እንመለከተዋለን። This is form. The form is a story, maybe the form may be saying, the form may be this one is storytelling. So we must be careful about the form of that message. Whereas that of genre is its own unique structure. እዚህ ጋር ሚስአንደርስታንድ እንዳናደርግ ቀደም ምን ብያለሁ? ኤክሰጀሲስ ማለት ከክፍል ውስጥ ወይም ኦቶሪያል ኢንቴንድድ ሚኒንግ ወይም ኦቶሪያል ኢንቴንድድ ሚኒንግ ምን እንደሆነ ማወቅ ነው። that is the exegesis means drawing out of meaning. ያንን ክፍል በትክክል አንደርስታንድ ማድረግ drawing out of that meaning, that specific authorial intended meaning from the given biblical text. So that is the task. So exegesis, that is the meaning of exegesis. What are the pitfalls of exegesis? ብዙ ጊዜ ብዙ ሰዎች ከቴክስቱን አንደርስታንድ ሳያደርጉ ኢንተርፕሬቴሽን ወይም አፕሊኬሽን ምናልባት ቴክስቱን አንደርስታንድ አለማድረግ ሚስ ኢንተርፕሬቴሽን እና ሚስ አፕሊኬሽን ይሆናል ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ ቴክስቱን መጀመሪያ ፕሮፐርሊ አንደርስታንድ ማድረግ ከዛ በኋላ ብዙ ስቴፖች አሉት። ቴክስቱን አንደርስታንድ በማድረግ ሂደት ውስጥ ወይም አንደርስታንድ ለማድረግ የሚረዱን ስቴፖች አሉት። ከኦብዘርቬሽን ጀምረን ኦብዘርቬሽን ላይ ምንድን ነው የምናየው? ሌሎች ቴክስቹዋል ቫሪያንት አለው፣ ሊትራሪ ኮንቴክስት አለው። ሊትራሪ ኮንቴክስት ይጠናል፣ ሂስቶሪካል ኮንቴክስት ይጠናል፣ ኢንቴንት ስትራክቸር፣ ሌክሲካል አናላይሲስ ማድረግ ካስፈለገን ሌሎች ክፍሎችም አሉት። ከዛ በኋላ ኤክሴጂቲካል አይዲያ፣ ከዚህ በኋላ አፕሊኬሽኑ የሚመጣው ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ እነዚህን ስቴፖች በደንብ ክሊርሊ አንደርስታንድ ማድረግ አለብን ማለት ነው። ሶ ብዙ ጊዜ ሰዎች ወዲያው አፕሊኬሽን ላይ ስለሚሄዱ ክፍሉን ሻሎ ያደርጉታል። ስለ ክፍሉ ያለን እውቀት የተወሰነ ያደርጉታል ማለት ነው፣ ፕሮፐር ኤክሴጂሲስ ስላልተደረገ ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ አንዱ ፒትፎል ምንድነው ወይም አንዱ ችግር የመጽሐፍ ቅዱስ ክፍሎችን በራሳችን መነጽር መመልከት ነው። that is imposing modern ideas. That means there are different modern ideas are there. Feminism is one of the challenge. Liberation theology is one of the challenge. Postmodern understanding is another challenge. So these are the challenges that people, many readers, tempted to impose their ideologies on biblical text. So the other is ለምሳሌ ፓራብልን እንደ ፓራብል ነው ማየት ያለብን። ፓራብሉ ማስተማሪያ እንጂ each and every correspondence ወይም እያንዳንዱ ክፍል እንደ ሌሎች ክፍሎች ካደረግነው ወይም እንደዛ አድርገን ከፈታ ነው ሌላ ችግር ነው የሚያመጣው። ስለዚህ ፓራብሉ ሌሰን መስጫ ነው፣ ሊትራሪ ዲቫይስ ነው የምንለው እሱ ማስተማሪያ ነው። እንመጣበታለን። ሊትራሪ ዲቫይስስ ምን አይነት ሊትራሪ ዲቫይሶች፣ የተለያዩ ቁጥሮች፣ የተለያየ ሊትራሪ ዲቫይሶች አሉ። ለምሳሌ ጎስፕል ኦፍ ጆን ዱዋሊስቲክ ሞቲቮችን ይጠቀማል። ኢት ኢዝ ዋን ኦፍ ዘ ሊትራሪ ዲቫይስ ዩኒክ የሆነ ሊትራሪ ዲቫይስ ነው። ሌላ ቦታ ማለት light, for example, light is opposed to darkness. Life is opposed to death. This is one of the dualistic motive of the Gospel of John. This is one of the literal device that John used in order to reveal what he had been testifying. So we must be careful about the things that is specific to that biblical material. So, ስለዚህ እያንዳንዱን biblical material ዩኒክ የሚያደርጓቸውን ነገሮች እያንዳንዱ ክፍሎች ማወቅ ያስፈልጋል። For example, we didn't find in the Gospel of John there is no parable. In the Gospel of John there is no anything about the for example, in Matthew chapter 5 up to 7, you will find the Sermon on the Mount. You didn't find the Sermon on the Mount in the Gospel of John. It has its own unique literary unit, so unique character. So you must be careful about each and every details of biblical text. So we must be take care about, for example, the I am statement in the Gospel of John and the miraculous deeds or miraculous signs. So that is the prologue. So, for example, the prologue must be carefully investigated, and also the narrative was for example, narrative account or the infancy narrative account of whether it's the Gospel of Luke or the Gospel of Matthew must be carefully understood. So each New Testament book has its own unique feature. That is my point. So overlooking literary form, parables must be treated as a parable, as a literal device. Dualistic motive must be treated as dualistic significance of that specific biblical comparison. And I have already discussed what does that mean, biblical genre. We have in the New Testament biblical genre at least 5 biblical genres are said. Gospel, sometimes it is together given to the historical narrative, since it is part of the Gospel is narration. And then epistles are there, and apocalyptic literature are there, and so on. This is what does that mean, biblical genre. So we must be careful. We must treat that specific biblical genre as its own unique character. The wisdom literature, epistolary, poetry, and so on. Wisdom literature, for example, we have wisdom literature in the Old Testament. So, over application, a single biblical text may not encompass everything of our application. We must be careful about the things that must be applied in that biblical text. So, over application means stating ወይንም ኦቨር አፕሊኬሽን ማለት ለምሳሌ ክፍሉ ማይለውን አፕላይ ለማድረግ መሞከር ማለት ነው። ክፍሉ የሚናገረውን ብቻ አፕላይ ወይንም ክፍሉን አንደርስታንድ ካደረግን በኋላ በዛ ክፍል ደግሞ አፕላይ እንድናደርገው የተፈለገው ሀሳብ ምንድን ነው ብለን ከክፍሉ ውስጥ ድሮ ማድረግ ነው እንጂ ከክፍሉ ውጭ ወይም ክፍሉ ማይናገረውን አፕሊኬሽን ካመጣን ሌላ ችግር ነው። ስፔሲፊክ ለስፔሲፊክ በሽታ ስፔሲፊክ መድኃኒት ነው የሚታዘዘው። ኦኬ so you are the doctor. So the other thing, this is what the common pitfalls of exegesis. Common pitfalls of exegesis. Okay. Methods of exegesis. What are the methods of exegesis? Methods means there are exegetical methods. Or exegesis, the task of exegesis uses different methodologies. Even though it is tiresome methodologies are there, but I must simplify these methods as short and precise, but read these methods as soon as possible, sooner. Okay, the first one is textual criticism. This one is textual criticism, not criticizing the text, as I said you in the introduction part. It is critical engagement of the text. You have been engaging the text critically. So the most or the ultimate aim of the textual criticism is to establish the most reliable text by comparing manuscript variants. Since we have been the copies of copies, so we must compare different copies in order to find the reliable text, or in order to identify the reliable text of that biblical, not only all texts, but variant text. Does that mean a variant text? Variant text is a text that holds or that contains or that identifies the textual variant. That means there are different readings regarding that biblical text. For example, we may have different reading in the different translations. So this translation brought their meaning from that earliest manuscripts. You know, from our Amharic ቅጆች ሲባል ሰምተን ነበር። So እነዛ ቅጆች የጥንት ቅጆች የምንላቸው ማለት ነው። So እነዛ የጥንት ቅጆች የማግኘት አክሰሱ ስላለን እነዚህ ደግሞ ትራንስሌሽኖች ከጥንት ቅጂዎች ናቸው የተቀዱት ማለት ነው። ከዛ ትራንስሌትድ ሆኖ ነው። ስለዚህ ፒሪየድ ቱ ትራንስሌሽን ያለውን ነገር የማግኘት አክሰስ አለ። We have the earliest manuscript. I will introduce you the earliest manuscript was online. Lines are there. So you will have, and we have also modern eclectics. These are modern textual variant texts. For example, Mitzgar is there. UBS, these apparatus are there. United Bible Society, Netherlands, the United Bible Society 5th edition, the Netherlands 28th edition are there. These are the materials that give us the variant readings for the specific biblical text. So along with our observation, or next to our observation, or understanding the whole arena of the given biblical text, reading and before and after the our given text under investigation, then the next task will be, if our biblical texts have different reading in different manuscripts, we must decide which biblical text is, or which meaning is needs to, or which meaning is the most readable. Regarding this is in regarding for the variant reading or variant text. So we must be careful about that. So we'll discuss about each part of each steps of textual criticism. So in this case, as I said you before, we have started from the general part and from general ones, and we'll discuss in detail. So this is the general one. Textual criticism is one of the methodology, one of the exegetical method, and then its main aim or its purpose is in order to establish the most reliable text by comparing manuscript variant. The process is examining different manuscript copies of the Bible text to the biblical text to identify differences and decide the most original wording. So, for example, in comparing different Greek manuscripts to determine the original wording of verse in the New Testament. So, this is the case when we have been discussing about the textual criticism. It is not critical, sorry, it is called critical method, not because it criticizes the Bible in sense of fault finding or seeks to be skeptical about the ancient text, but because it compares and analyzes the details of the text to arrive at the intended meaning. Already I said you before. Our aim is must not be interpreted as in the negative way, or is not to criticize the Bible, but in order to understand the text by critical engagement to that biblical text. Not in the case of criticizing or fault finding, but we have been discussing in order to have more, or in order to have reach close reading to the original text. As not, our aim is in order to find, or in order to establish the most reliable text. The task is comparing manuscript variant. We compare that manuscript variant. We have different tasks are there. Comparing in part, internal evidence are there, external evidence are there. Internal evidence also can be categorized in different levels. External evidence also has their own distribution, the genealogy, geographical location, and so on. We have different tasks are there. So these four tasks are done in order to establish the most relevant text. So this is our main task is not in order to have, or in order to find fault within a biblical text. Rather, we have been, since we are a believer, and not only that, we are sustained about that biblical text. But there are different readings. That different readings arise from different things. whether it is intentional or unintentional. It is when the writers are copying from copies or copies, maybe this is their transposition, their misplacement, their insertion, and so on. But the things are not exaggerated so too much because our 99.8% of our biblical text in hand is accurate, or it is reliable, or it is the original, or it is compared to the ancient manuscript, it is similar. So our 0.02% has different readings, and how do we handle that different readings? That is the task of textual criticism. Okay. So if you have any question regarding, I know you may have this question in your mind, but we will discuss a lot about textual criticism in the next class, a week later. So historical criticism, the other methodology of the exegesis. So historical criticism is to understand historical context in which the text was written. What was their historical context? Who are the recipients? What do we know about the author? Where they are living? Or what was their setting? What was their situations? What is their social dynamics are there? So what is their political situation? What is their expectation? The things that deals with this and are things these are historical criticism or analyzing the historical things that help to understand the background study of the given biblical text. So the process is researching the cultural, political, and social circumstances of the time. That is the process. For example, investigating the historical background for Pauline letters to the Corinthian. Is there any patronage or historical that is that helpful in order to identify? For example, in the case of Timothy and Paul, what is the relationship between Timothy and Paul? Yeah, we'll discuss that one. Investigating historical background, for example, in the Samaritan woman. The history of Samaritan woman, the Gospel of John, chapter 4. What are the things that surround this historical background? What are the relationship between Judea and Samaritan? What was their claim about the disciples were blaming Jesus talking with a woman? What was their intention? What was the perception behind in that gender issue during that time? This and other related things are the concern of historical criticism. So this is one of the methods, historical criticism. But historical criticism must not be understood for example, in the case of Enlightenment background, not in order to doubt the historicity of biblical texts, but in order to find the extra understanding, or in order to have further understanding about the things that surround the historical matters that surround the biblical text. not in order to doubt the historicity of the biblical text, but in the case of the Enlightenment period, unless and otherwise, the perception is that, unless and otherwise the thing is, or it is reconstructed. That means it is supported by an evidence. Its historicity will be doubtful. We are not doing that. Since our aim is not in order to question the historicity of that biblical text. Our aim is to have more information to have more background information regarding that biblical text. So that must be rejected. So we don't have a question of historicity. Since we have not only this text is not only simply a text. Some of them consider this as an ancient text, but that is not the case. We believe that even though we haven't any background reconstruction, this is the work of God. But there are also many evidence that support the biblical accounts. Archaeological findings are there. That is the secondary affirmation for our biblical text. The thing that surrounds this and everything is that the methodology that used to understand these things is historical criticism or historical engagement of that text. Okay, the other thing that are methodology that used to in the exegetical method, literary criticism. What does that mean? Literary criticism to analyze the text as a piece of literature. That means engaging the text as a literature, or we may use the beauty of that literary text. We may examine genre. For example, we may examine that structure in the sentence level, in the discourse level, in the word by word level. So we have these different tasks. But we must not forget that there are criticisms in the literary, or there are shortcomings. Many, አንዳንድ ነገሮችን ስንመለከት ሊትራሪ ክሪቲሲዝም ስንል ብቻውን ከተጠቀምነው እንደ ሜቶዶሎጂ መጨረሻ ላይ ሰጀስት አደርጋችኋለሁ። ኦኬ ሊትራሪ ክሪቲሲዝም ስንል ምን ማለታችን ነው? በመጀመሪያ ደረጃ ቴክስቱን እንደ አንድ ሊትራሪ ዩኒት መመልከት ነው፣ ወይም መጽሐፍ ቅዱስን እንደ አንድ ሊትራሪ ቢዩቲ እንዳለው እንደ አንድ ሊትሬቸር መመልከት ማለት ነው። ያንን ስናደርግ ኤግዛማይኒንግ ጃንራ፣ ስትራክቸር፣ ሊትራሪ ዲቫይስ፣ ናሬቲቭ ቴክኒክስ። ነገር ግን ይሄ ብቻውን በቂ አይደለም። ለዛም ነው ሜቶዶሎጂን የምናዋቅራቸው። literary criticism with that of historical criticism, historical, literary, grammatical, and so on. We have been discussing that one. When we are combining these methodologies, we will benefit a lot. So literary criticism and ክፍሉን እንደ አንድ literary unit, እንደ አንድ literary book ማየት ነው። But there are also certain critics regarding literary criticism. Critics are there because since we have discussing about authorial intended meaning, don't forget that one. Authorial intended meaning is our main motto. So in this regard, if we use literary criticism only, the thing is that at the end of the output of literary criticism may end with analyzing literary beauties of biblical text. So we must combine this with historical criticism to have or to be benefited by a lot. So literary criticism, maybe there are some hermeneutical categories are there. For example, author center, text center, and reader center approach are there. In this regard, text center approach, even though it affirms that the text has has able to communicate a specific meaning, but it denies that the presence of the author. Or it denies or it what does that mean? ለምሳሌ የኦቶሪያል ኢንቴንድድ ሚኒንግ ነው የምንለው እሱ አይቀበልም። ምክንያቱም the author is already not here. So we have the text is in our hand. So just ቴክስቱ ራሱ እንዲናገር ብቻ መተው አለብን ወይም ከቴክስት ሊትራሪ ቴክስት አናላይዝ ብቻ የሚገኘው ሚኒንግ ነው አሰምሽን ስላለው ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ የሄርሜኔቲካል ፊሎዞፊው ከዚህ ከሊትራሪ ክሪቲሲዝም በስተጀርባ ያለው የሄርሜኔቲካል ፊሎዞፊ ጭምር ማወቅ አለብን ማለት ነው። ለዛ ነው ብቻውን ቆሞ ምንም እንኳን እንደ አንድ ኤክሴጂቲካል ሜተድ ብንጠቀምበትም ከሌሎች ጋራ በማዋሃድ ስንጠቀመው የበለጠ የተሻለ እናደርገዋለን። So using literary criticism, for example, we may use the forcing context, contextual analysis are there, and in that literary criticism there are different literary criticisms are the formal critical approach is there, structural or they are different. We will discuss that one. So በብዙ የምንጠቀመው ከሌሎች ቴክኒኮች ጋር ስናዋቅረው ነው። For example, source criticism. What are the source criticism? To identify the original source used by the biblical authors. ምናልባት ቢብሊካል ኦተሮች የተጠቀሙት ሌላ ሶርስ አለ። For example, in synoptic gospels, many writers suggest that behind synoptic gospel there is an identified or there's a cube source behind the synoptic gospel. ሶስቱ ተመሳሳይ ወንጌላትን የተጠቀሙት ፕራዮሪቲያቸው ቢለያይም ከበስተጀርባቸው ኪቡ የሚባል ሶርስ አለ የሚል ሃይፖቴሲስ አለ። It is not a real thing, but this is hypothesis. Whether it is true or false, we may discuss that one. Anyway, there are sources are there. Source criticism identifies these things. For example, how do we handle the prologue of the Gospel of John? Gospel of John ላይ መግቢያውም የቁጥር 1 የመጀመሪያዎቹን 18 ቨርሶችን according to Bultmann, this is taken from the other source, saying. He calls us saying. But it is taken from the other sayings. So John uses or incorporates this saying in order to communicate or in order to answer the situation of his community. So this is something adversarial, of course, source criticism. So in relation to or in order to prepare that biblical material, the main thing is that the biblical authors use extra materials. That is source criticism, whether it is true or false, is the task of source criticism. So detecting various sources of tradition behind the text. Investigate the source of the synoptic gospel, for example, in the book of the Gospel of Mark, Matthew, Luke, and so on. This is synoptic gospel. That is the case of synoptic gospel. The other methodology that is used is that form criticism. In what form? It treats different forms are there before writing or before finalizing the given biblical text. So it may be in the oral, or it may be oral tradition that lay behind the gospel, and there are different presuppositions as well regarding form criticism. So identifying different forms such as parables, segments, and miraculous stories, and studying their function, classifying the different types of silence, lament, praise, thanksgiving, and so on. This is form criticism. In what form the biblical text was there before writing or compiling as a one, or before written by the, the author. The author. Maybe the one that helps the apostle or the apostle, and so on. Is he drawing in different forms of saying or artists and combining as one unit of thought or not? It is a task of form criticism. Okay. We'll continue our discussion in the next week. I will send these source materials. If you have any question regarding today's lesson, please go ahead, since we have 3 minutes.